All right, let's jump right in. We're going all the way back to 13th century France to talk about a man who was blind from birth, but who somehow saw the hidden architecture of the entire universe. He's a figure so mysterious, so influential, that he's known today as the father of Kabbalah. His name was Rabbi Yitzhak Sagi Nahor, and his ideas, well, they would go on to shape spiritual history in ways he literally could never have seen.
And believe it or not, it all starts with something you might actually know. For centuries, this really beautiful Hanukkah tradition has been passed down. The idea that to truly absorb the spiritual light of the holiday, you've got to prepare your candles and oil 2 full days in advance. Now, this isn't just about being organized, right? It's a spiritual act of preparation. And this simple piece of folk wisdom, it comes directly from this mysterious blind rabbi.
So how in the world do we get from a simple holiday custom to a title as huge as Father of Kabbalah? Well, that's where things start to get really interesting. You see, for the longest time, scholars were completely divided about who Rabbi Yitzhak really was. They were wrestling with this huge mystery at the very heart of his work. Here was the core of the debate. Was he just a charismatic teacher whose brilliant ideas were only passed down by word of mouth through his students, or was he the actual author of the foundational, game-changing texts that were credited to him? And look, this wasn't just some dusty academic argument. The answer changes everything about how we understand the birth of Kabbalah. Was it born from a spoken tradition or from a single foundational written text? So how did they finally solve this thing? Well, researchers uncovered 3 key pieces of evidence that were just overwhelming. First, pretty much every single reliable medieval manuscript of the text in question says, clear as day, that he's the author. Second, and this is kind of the smoking gun, later mystics wrote commentaries on his commentary. You just don't do that unless you're dealing with a core, foundational text. And finally, the biggest names of that whole era were quoting him, sometimes even by name, almost immediately after he lived. The conclusion became undeniable. He wasn't just a teacher, he was the author. Okay, so we've established he actually wrote it. So what on earth was in this revolutionary book? What was this blueprint of reality that he, a man living in total physical darkness, was able to see so clearly? The whole system, the entire thing, is built on one single idea: 32 wondrous paths of wisdom. Now, these aren't physical roads, obviously. Think of them more like the hidden channels, the divine wiring that runs through all of existence, connecting the infinite mind of God all the way down to the smallest little detail of our world. The first 10 of these paths are the ones you probably heard of, the 10 Sephirot. He described them as emanations without substance. They're the core attributes of the divine. Things like wisdom, understanding, kindness, that act like the fundamental building blocks of reality. So don't think of them as things, but as the principles that allow an infinite, totally unknowable God to create and interact with our finite world. He had this absolutely beautiful way of explaining his core philosophy. He used this powerful analogy. Reality is like countless flames and threads of light, all coming from a single hidden coal. The flames, they all look separate, they all look different, but every single one is completely connected to that one unified source. For him, the incredible diversity we see all around us was just a magnificent expression of a single hidden unity. And this is where the blueprint gets just incredibly detailed. He maps these divine forces onto everything. I mean, look at this table. The very building blocks of the Hebrew alphabet are organized into these groups that correspond perfectly to the structure of space, of time, and even of the human soul. So you see, the 3 primary elements in the world mirror the 3 seasons in time, which mirror the 3 main sections of the human body. The universe isn't random, it's a reflection. And the human being? We're a microcosm, a perfect little mirror of the entire cosmos. Now this mystical blueprint, it wasn't just some cool theory to think about. No, it led to a radical, active, and as it turned out, a highly dangerous spiritual practice.
This practice was called kavanat, which means mystical intentions. And the idea was if you understand the blueprint, you can actually interact with it. So prayer was no longer just about asking God for things. It became an act of what you could call spiritual engineering. A mystic could literally direct their intention to a specific sphera, a specific channel of divine energy, to, in theory, unblock it, draw down more of it, and actively influence how God's energy flows into the world.
And you can bet this idea caused an immediate and ferocious backlash from 2 totally different directions. Critics outside the movement were horrified. They looked at this and said, "This is polytheism. You're praying to created forces, not the one God." They basically called it heresy. But the most shocking criticism, by far, came from inside the mystical world itself.
The great Kabbalist Ramban, a giant of the era, issued this stunning critique. He said, yes, the blueprint is real. The Sefirot are absolutely real. But, he argued, you must never direct your worship to them. Prayer, he insisted, has to be aimed only at God himself, the pure essence that's beyond the whole system. To pray to a part of the divine machinery, even if it's real, was a forbidden act. So get this, the idea was considered dangerous even by the people who believed its underlying theory was true.
So, how do we square this circle? How can one man be the source of both a simple, lovely Hanukkah custom and a theology so radical that even its own masters condemned it? This brings us to his true and very complicated legacy. So who was he really? Was he a folk saint, a purveyor of gentle traditions that could pass down through families? Or was he a radical mystic who unleashed a powerful and maybe even dangerous idea into the world? The contradiction here is just staggering. In the end, the answer is he was both. And that, right there, is the genius of his legacy. He created a system, a blueprint of reality, so profound and so multifaceted that it could radiate outward in every direction. It was deep enough to become the foundation for the highest, most complex, and even controversial mystical theology. And at the exact same time, it was accessible enough to trickle down and shape the simplest, most intimate traditions that families still practice today, centuries later, gathered around the light of their Hanukkah candles.